Renee, turn toward the window. The light is better there. That was my mother. I was standing 4 feet away. My name is Callie McCray. I'm 22 years old, and on the morning of my college graduation, my mother spent 11 minutes adjusting my twin sister's hair and didn't once look in my direction. I want you to sit with that for a second. 2 daughters, same house, same last name, same graduation day. One of them never quite real enough to notice. That was me. That was always me. We lived in Cedar Park, just outside Austin. Nice neighborhood, 2-car garage, the kind of house that looks like everything is fine from the outside. Inside, there was Renee's world, and then there was the space I occupied quietly at the edges of it. That morning, I was in my room pressing my graduation gown when my father's laugh rolled down the hallway. Gerald McCray had a laugh that filled rooms, warm, easy, the kind that made strangers feel like they'd known him for years. I had spent my entire childhood wishing he would aim it at me. "You nervous, baby?" That was him, talking to Renee. "Daddy, I'm fine, stop." More laughing. I pressed the iron down harder. My mother knocked and opened my door in the same motion. "Callie, you ready?" Not "good morning," not "how are you feeling," not "I'm proud of you," just "are you ready?" Like I was something to be checked off a list before they could focus on what actually mattered. "Yes, Mom." She glanced at my gown, nodded once, and walked back out. I set the iron down. I looked at myself in the mirror above my dresser. Behind me on the wall were things my parents had never once acknowledged: my Dean's List certificates, my departmental award, a framed letter from the College of Natural Sciences that I'd hung there myself because no one else was going to hang it. I made myself a promise that morning. Whatever happens today, you will not cry in front of them. Not today, not ever again. Here is what you need to understand about Renee before this story goes any further. She is not a monster. She's charming and pretty and the kind of person who makes friends in elevator rides. She has never in her life had to try very hard for anything because her parents made sure of it. She graduated that day with a 3.4 GPA, communications degree. No job lined up, no plan. My parents had paid for everything. Tuition, her apartment near campus, her car, her trips, every single dollar. I graduated summa cum laude, computer science. I had a job offer already signed and sitting in my email. I had worked 28 hours a week at a university tech lab for 3 years to cover what my scholarship didn't. I had never once asked my parents for money because I already knew what the answer would be. "Renee needs it more, Callie. You're the strong one. You don't need as much." I had heard that my entire life dressed up in different words. At 16, when Renee got a car and I got a bus pass. At 18, when she got a new laptop for college and I got nothing. At 19, when she studied abroad in Costa Rica for a semester and my mother told me international experience wasn't really necessary for everyone. I stopped asking. I stopped expecting. I built everything alone and I kept my mouth shut about it. The Frank Irwin Center was packed the way it only gets for graduations and game days. 1,200 graduates, families everywhere, that specific kind of noise that feels like joy from a distance. I found my seat in the processional line. Around me, classmates were hugging each other, laughing, taking photos. I smiled when I needed to, and I kept my phone in my hand. There was an unread email I'd been sitting on for 3 days. I opened it. Daniel Reeves, VP of Engineering, Stratos Systems, Houston, Texas, one of the fastest-growing aerospace technology firms in the country. I had interviewed 4 times over 3 months, flown to Houston twice on my own money, and 3 weeks ago they'd made me an offer I had to read twice before I believed it. The email confirmed everything: start date, benefits package, relocation support. And at the bottom, the salary. I locked my phone. 6 weeks, I just had to get through today first. They called my name 40 minutes in. Callie McCray, summa cum laude. I walked across that stage. I shook the dean's hand. Dr. Elizabeth Carr, sharp woman, late 50s, the kind of professor who remembered every student she'd ever taught. She had been my academic advisor for 2 years. She had written one of my recommendation letters for Stratos. She leaned in slightly as she handed me my diploma. "Don't let today be the biggest thing that ever happens to you," she said quietly. "You're just getting started." I nodded. I walked back to my seat. From my family section, I heard applause. Polite, the kind you give someone you don't really know at someone else's recital. 17 minutes later, Renee's name was called.
My father stood up. My mother made a sound I will never forget, this sharp, overwhelmed gasp, like she was watching something miraculous. Half the table rose with them. I sat with my hands folded in my lap and watched my family become a completely different family than the one they'd been 60 seconds earlier. I didn't cry, I'd promised. The reception was on the south lawn. White tents, round tables, that specific May heat that hits Austin like a wall. Families everywhere, flowers and champagne and noise. My parents had reserved a table for 12. I found them near the east tent. My father was already pouring. Renee was at the center, glowing, telling a story with her hands while everyone leaned in. My mother was beside her, one hand on her back, beaming. I walked up. My mother looked over. "Callie, just grab any seat, honey. We're waiting on your aunt." Any seat, at a table my parents reserved, at my own graduation. Any seat. I sat at the far end. I put my diploma folder on the table and I looked at the centerpiece and I breathed. Luca dropped into the chair next to me, my cousin on my father's side, a year younger, the one person in my family who had never once made me feel like a ghost. He looked at me for a long moment. "Summa cum laude," he said. "You know that's the highest one." "I know. Does anyone else at this table know that?" I didn't answer. He shook his head slowly. "Callie, Luca, don't. I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting here watching your parents pour a third glass for Renee, and nobody's even looked at your diploma." I picked up a water glass. 6 weeks. What's in 6 weeks? I looked at him. Everything changes. He studied my face, trying to read it. He knew me well enough to know I wasn't being dramatic. Before he could ask anything else, my father stood up. Gerald McCray tapped his champagne flute twice. The table went quiet the way it always did for him. "I want to say a few words about my daughter," he said, his voice warm and full. "About Renee." He turned directly to her, didn't look at me, didn't glance my direction, didn't include me in the sweep of the moment. Just Renee. "Baby girl, you have been the light of this family since the day you came into this world. Watching you walk across that stage today," his voice broke, actually broke, and my mother reached over and grabbed his arm, and there were tears at the table, real tears, and everyone was nodding, and my Aunt Carol pressed her hand over her heart. Renee covered her mouth, shook her head. "Daddy, stop." "I'm serious," he steadied himself. "I am so proud of the woman you've become, so proud. And to celebrate that," he reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "Your mother and I have been planning this for 8 months. The table leaned forward. 3 weeks in El Nido, Philippines. Flights, private resort, island tours, every single thing covered. $18,000. Because you, Renee McCray, deserve to see the most beautiful place on earth." The table erupted. Gasps, applause, Renee screaming, my aunt grabbing my mother, my father laughing that big, easy laugh, finally aimed at something he was proud of. I sat at the end of the table with a water glass in my hand, and I did not move. Luca got very still beside me. Renee tore open the envelope and pulled out a printed itinerary, thick as a magazine. She fanned through it and burst into tears. Mom, this is too much." "Nothing is too much for you," my mother said. And she meant it. You could hear it. She meant every word. The photographer my parents had hired, which I had only just noticed standing near the tent pole, was snapping continuously, capturing the moment, archiving the joy. My father looked down the table, like an afterthought finding its place. "Collie," he smiled, thin, the smile he used when he was about to say something he'd already decided was reasonable. "We have something for you too, sweetheart." The table went slightly quieter. My mother reached into her purse. I watched her hand come out. Small white envelope, the cheap kind, grocery store customer service desk kind. She held it out toward me. "We thought a lot about what would be meaningful for you," she said, and her voice had changed. The warmth was still there, but it was different now, measured, the voice she used when she was explaining something to a child who was about to be difficult about it. "Mom, what's right in front of you?" She set the envelope on the table in front of me. I opened it. A Starbucks gift card. $10. I turned it over once, looked at the number printed on the back, looked up at my mother. "It's about the gesture, not the amount." Nobody at the table said anything. Luca's jaw was tight. He could see him deciding whether to speak. I picked up a water glass. 22 years of being someone's afterthought, sitting right there in my palm. I looked at my father. He was already turning back to Renee, already back inside the warmth of the moment he actually cared about. I stood up. I picked up my diploma folder. "Thank you," I said, quiet, steady. I walked away from the table. Behind me, I heard my mother call my name, half confused, half irritated. The tone she used when I was being sensitive again. I didn't stop. Luca caught up to me 20 steps later. He didn't say anything first, just walked beside me. Then, "Collie, what did you mean, 6 weeks?" I looked straight ahead. "I mean, I already have a life they don't know anything about, and in 6 weeks, I'm gone." He stopped walking. I didn't. If you've ever been handed the short end at a moment that was supposed to be yours, you already know what I was feeling walking away from that table. The question isn't whether I was right to leave. The question is what I was walking toward.
I didn't go home that night. I drove to Luca's apartment in East Austin, sat on his couch and didn't speak for 40 minutes. He made coffee. He didn't push. That's why he was the only family member I trusted. He knew when silence was the right thing. Eventually, he said, "You sleeping here?" "Yeah." "Okay." No lecture, no "call your mother," no "I'm sure they meant well." He was at that table. He saw the card. He didn't need me to explain anything. I fell asleep at 2 a.m. with 14 missed calls on my phone. I turned it face down and left it there. 3 days before graduation, Dr. Elizabeth Carr had emailed me. She was my academic advisor, sharp, silver-haired, the kind of professor who forgot nothing and excused nothing. She had mentored my research for 2 years and written my recommendation to Stratos Systems, the aerospace tech firm in Houston that had already made me an offer I hadn't told my parents about. Her email was an invitation to UT's faculty honors ceremony 4 days after commencement. Small room, 200 people, faculty, donors, department heads, the kind of event where the awards actually meant something. She had nominated me for the Distinguished Graduate Research Award, the highest honor the engineering faculty gave out. I had been sitting on that nomination for 8 months. My parents didn't know. They never asked what I was working on, so I never told them. At the bottom of her email, she wrote, "Your parents are welcome to attend. I hope they do." I stared at that line a long time. I wrote back and told her they would not be receiving an invitation from me. She replied in 11 minutes. Understood. I'll see you Thursday. Those 3 days I didn't waste. I signed my Stratos offer letter, confirmed my start date, paid first month's rent on a Houston apartment my parents had never heard of, using savings they didn't know existed. I packed 2 bags and put them in my car quietly, the way I had done everything in my life, without announcement, without permission, without anyone watching. Renee texted 7 times. Kylie, where are you? Mom is upset. I didn't know they were going to do that. Please just call me. I read every message. I responded to none of them. She'd had 22 years to say something. 22 years of watching and choosing silence. That silence was its own answer. I had finally learned to treat it like one. Thursday evening, I drove to the faculty club in a black dress I had bought myself 6 months ago, knowing this day was coming. Dr. Carr met me at the door. She said, "You came alone." "Yes." "Good." She paused. "Though I should tell you something." She had emailed your parents. Not an invitation, an information. 1 paragraph. Factual. "Your daughter is being recognized Thursday evening. You may want to be present." I went still. "You told them." "I made sure they had no excuse not to know," she said precisely. "There's a difference." I looked past her into the room, and there they were. My father near the back in a hurried jacket, my mother beside him, scanning the room with the expression of someone who had arrived somewhere they didn't understand. Renee between them, phone in hand. My mother saw me, raised her hand in a small wave. I turned back to Dr. Carr. "Let's start," I said. 30 minutes of standard ceremony, teaching awards, donor recognition. My parents sat in the back, and I kept my eyes forward. Then Dr. Carr took the podium. She didn't ease into it. "The Distinguished Graduate Research Award goes to a student whose work doesn't just meet a standard, it moves a field forward. This year's recipient did that while working 28 hours a week, funding her own education entirely, and doing it without the kind of support most of us take for granted." The room was still. Her research on predictive navigation modeling for aerospace systems has already been reviewed by 2 federal contractors. She has accepted a position at Stratos Systems in Houston at a salary that would embarrass most of this faculty. Quiet laughter, a few raised eyebrows. She did all this while certain people in her life told her she wasn't worth investing in. No one laughed at that part. The Distinguished Graduate Research Award goes to Kylie McCray. The applause was immediate and full. I walked to that podium, and I did not look at my parents until I was standing behind the microphone. Then I did. My father's face was unreadable. My mother had both hands over her mouth. Renee was staring at me like she was seeing someone she had never met. Maybe she was. I kept my remarks short. I want to thank Dr. Carr, who saw me clearly when that was not a universal experience. I paused. I also want to thank everyone who didn't believe in me. You taught me that I had no option to believe in myself. That turned out to be enough. I picked up the award. I walked off the stage. Behind me, I heard my mother say my name, Kylie, in a voice I had never heard from her before. Soft, uncertain, like she was saying it for the first time and wasn't sure she deserved it. Luca was waiting at the side door. He looked at the award in my hand, then at my face. "They saw all of it," he said. "Good. What now?" I pushed the door open into the warm Austin night. Now I leave, and they have to figure out how long they've been standing in a room they never bothered to look around. I walked to my car, 2 bags already packed in the trunk. Houston was 4 hours away. I didn't look back. They finally saw who I was, but seeing isn't the same as understanding, and understanding isn't the same as change.
I drove to Houston that same night. No goodbye, no dramatic exit. I just drove. Windows down, radio off, the Austin skyline shrinking in my rear view until it disappeared completely. My new apartment was on the 4th floor of a building in Midtown Houston. Small, clean, mine. I had signed the lease 3 weeks earlier during a lunch break between interviews. I carried my 2 bags up 4 flights and stood in the empty living room at 1 a.m. and felt something I hadn't felt in 22 years. Quiet. Real quiet. The kind that doesn't have disappointment underneath it. I slept better that night than I had in years. Monday morning, I walked into Stratos Systems for the first time as an employee. Glass building, 12 floors, the kind of lobby that tells you immediately the work inside matters. I gave my name at the front desk, and a woman named Claire smiled like she already knew who I was. "Miss McCray, Mr. Reeves is expecting you." Daniel Reeves was the VP of Engineering. Late 40s, direct, the kind of leader who asked one question and listened to the entire answer. He shook my hand and walked me to my desk himself. "We've been waiting on you," he said. "The navigation modeling project needs exactly what you built at UT. You're not starting from scratch here. You're picking up speed." I sat down at that desk. Brand new laptop, my name on a placard, a calendar already full of meetings with people who had read my research and wanted to talk about it. I thought about the $10 gift card sitting somewhere in my old bedroom. Then I opened my laptop and got to work. Luca texted me that first week with updates I didn't ask for but couldn't stop reading. "Your mom has called me 4 times. Your dad showed up at Aunt Carol's asking if anyone knew where you were living. Renee posted something on Instagram, deleted it 20 minutes later. I screenshotted it." He sent the screenshot. Renee's post was a photo of us from childhood, maybe 8 years old, gap-toothed, arms around each other on some beach vacation. The caption read, "Some distances can't be fixed with a phone call. I'm sorry I stayed quiet for so long." 412 likes before she deleted it. I stared at it for a long time. Then I put my phone face down and finished my report. 3 weeks in, Daniel called me into his office. I assumed it was a check-in, standard new hire review. I sat down across from him with my notebook open. He slid a folder across the desk. "The federal contractor review came back on your navigation model," he said. "They want to license it." I looked at the folder. License it? The Department of Defense. They want to integrate your predictive framework into their unmanned systems program. He leaned back. "Callie, we're talking about a government contract built around work you did as an undergraduate." I opened the folder. The numbers on the first page made the room feel a little tilted. "There's a co-inventor clause," Daniel continued. "Since you developed the core model before joining Stratos, you retain partial intellectual property rights. Our legal team has already reviewed it. You'll want your own attorney to look at it too, but..." He paused. "You're about to make significantly more money than your salary." I closed the folder carefully. "How long have you known this was possible?" I asked. 22nd interview, he said. "It's why we moved so fast on the offer." I sat with that for a moment. 22 years of being told I wasn't worth the investment, and I had accidentally built something the federal government wanted to buy. My parents found my new number through Aunt Carol. I still don't know exactly how. One Tuesday evening, my phone rang with an unknown Houston area code, and something made me answer it. My mother's voice. "Callie." I didn't respond immediately. "Callie, please don't hang up." "I'm here." A long pause. I could hear her breathing. Then, "We didn't know. About the award. About Stratos. About any of it. We didn't know." "I know you didn't." "Why didn't you tell us?" And there it was. The question she thought was an accusation toward me, not understanding it was an indictment of herself. "Mom," I kept my voice level, "when was the last time you asked me what I was working on?" Silence. "When was the last time you came to one of my research presentations, or asked about my classes, or called me first, not because something was wrong, but just to ask how I was doing?" Nothing. "You didn't know because you didn't ask. That's not my failure, that's yours." She started crying, real crying, not the performance of it. "We're going to fix this. Your father and I. We're in therapy. We started last week. Dr. Coleman, we want to fix this." I looked out my apartment window at the Houston skyline. "I hope you do," I said, genuinely. "But fixing yourself isn't the same as fixing us. That's a separate project, and it's not one I'm available for right now." "Collie." "I need 6 months, Mom. No contact. Let me build my life. Then we'll see." She didn't argue. Maybe that was therapy. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe she finally understood that she had used up the part of me that argued back. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." I ended the call. I sat in my quiet apartment for a long time after that. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel sad. I felt something cleaner than either of those things. I felt like a person who had made a decision and meant it. 6 weeks after graduation, Forbes reached out. Not the main magazine, their regional Texas edition. A journalist named Adam Voss, who covered emerging tech. He'd seen the DoD contract announcement, traced it back to my UT research, found my name on the Stratos staff page. His email was 3 sentences. "Mr. Quay, I'd like to profile you for our Texas Innovators feature. Your story seems like one people need to hear." I read it twice, thought about my mother's voice on the phone, thought about that gift card, thought about Renee's deleted Instagram post and 22 years of staying quiet. I wrote back, "Mr. Voss, I'm available Thursday. Let's talk." The profile ran 2 weeks later. I didn't see it before it published. I had approved the facts, declined to discuss my family directly, and let Adam write what he wrote. Luca sent it to me at 7 a.m. on a Wednesday, with no message, just the link. The headline read, "At 22, she built what the Pentagon wanted. Nobody in her family saw it coming." I read it once, set my phone down, got ready for work. My phone did not stop for 3 days. Colleagues, former professors, people from my undergraduate program I hadn't spoken to in a year, 2 recruiting firms, 1 venture capital group, and 1 text from a number I didn't recognize until I read the name at the top, Renee. I read the article. "I don't expect you to respond. I just need you to know that I'm ashamed of myself. Not because of what they did, because of what I didn't do. There's a difference, and I finally understand it. I'm proud of you, Collie. I always was. I was just too selfish to say it when it would have meant something." I held my phone for a long moment. Then I put it in my drawer and went to work. Some things needed more time than a text message. Some things needed more than words entirely. She finally reached out. My father finally said sorry, and I finally had a life that was completely and entirely mine.
But here's the thing about people who hurt you. They don't disappear just because you've outgrown them. They find new ways back in.
The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Thick envelope, my mother's handwriting, my office address. They still didn't have my home, and I hadn't offered it. 3 letters inside. My father's first. Gerald McCray had never said, "I was wrong," without a qualifier in his life. So when I read the opening line, "Callie, I was wrong, completely. There is no other way to say it," I stopped and read it again. Their therapist assigned them to list every moment they chose one daughter over the other, write it all down. My father said it took 4 sessions. Every time I thought I'd reached the worst of it, I remembered something else. The bus pass, your presentations I never came to, the graduation. I counted the ways I failed you, and I lost count. A father shouldn't be able to say that. My mother's circled the wound before touching it, but she touched it. I told myself you were strong, so I wouldn't feel guilty giving you less. I turned your resilience into a reason to neglect you. You weren't strong because you needed less. You were strong because we gave you no other choice. Renee's was half a page. I got a job, found it myself, $34,000. It's humbling. You were earning 6 figures while I was letting Mom and Dad buy my personality. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just need you to know I finally understand what I took from you. Not the money, your right to be seen. I took that every time I stayed quiet. I'm not quiet anymore. I called Luca. They did the work, I said. They actually did it. Doesn't mean you owe them anything. I know. I looked at the 3 letters. I just wanted to feel nothing when I read them. I don't. What do you want, Callie? Not what's fair. What do you actually want? I sat with that. A family that sees me, I said. I don't know if it's too late for them to be that. Only one way to find out. I sent 3 conditions, not negotiations. 1, one lunch, public, neutral, my choice. Goes well, we talk about what's next. Doesn't, we don't. 2, Renee comes separately. 3, no speeches. We eat like adults. My mother replied in an hour, whatever you need. Midtown restaurant, white tablecloths. I arrived early, took a corner table, back to the wall. I watched them walk in before they saw me. They looked smaller. Therapy had stripped the performance away. My father without his certainty. My mother's hands clasped like she was walking into something she knew she hadn't earned. They sat. Nobody reached for a hug. They were smart enough not to try. What is my research about? I said. My father answered, mostly right. He'd studied it, the way he should have 4 years ago. My mother knew the DoD contract cold. She'd printed the Forbes article, she said, and put it on the refrigerator, where Renee's prom photos used to be. What did you feel when they called my name at the honors ceremony? My mother held herself together. I thought, when did this happen? And then, she stopped. It happened because we left you alone long enough that you had to build everything yourself. That is the worst thing I have ever understood about myself. My father put his hand on the table, not grabbing mine, just there. We don't expect to be your parents the way we were, he said. We lost that. We're asking for whatever you're willing to give. I looked at his hand. I thought about the bus pass, the graduation, $10 in my palm while Renee held $18,000. I put my hand over his. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe not fully ever. A door, cracked, on my terms. Once a month, I said. Lunch, honest. The moment it stops being honest,
it stops completely. My mother exhaled 6 months in one breath. Yes, my father said, once a month. Renee was 2 weeks later, just us. She looked different. The curated version of her, the one our family had been building her whole life, was gone. What was left was just a person, tired, real. I don't know how to do this, she said. Neither do I, so we just talk. An hour. We didn't fix anything. You don't fix 22 years over coffee, but we were honest at the same time about the same thing. That was new. That was enough. Walking to my car, I called Luca. Strange, I said, before he could ask. Good. Both. I sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. I spent my whole life waiting for them to see me. Now that they do, I don't need it the way I used to. Because you learned to see yourself first, Luca said. I started the car. Houston filled my windshield, glass and steel and forward motion.
I still have the gift card. $10. Never spent. Top drawer of my desk at Stratus, between a USB drive and a spare badge clip. Some mornings I look at it before I open my laptop. Not bitterness, clarity. A year out, and my life looked nothing like anything they had imagined for me, because they'd never imagined anything for me at all. DoD contract closed, promoted to team lead at 23, 7 engineers, work I couldn't discuss at dinner parties. Daniel had stopped saying, for someone your age. The age had stopped being the point. Corner unit, 11th floor, Houston skyline on 2 sides, paid for with money earned from work that started at 2 a.m. in a university lab while my parents slept unbothered in Cedar Park. I thought about that sometimes, how much they missed by not looking. The monthly lunches held, 6 by then. My parents hadn't once mentioned money, compared me to Renee, or slipped back into the old version of themselves. My father was asking real questions now, clumsy still, a man learning a language late, but learning. 4th lunch, my mother brought a folder. Inside, my science fair trophies, my honor society letter, things that had lived in drawers for years while Renee's achievements covered every wall. She slid it across, without a word. I had them framed, she said. They're in the living room. I know it's too late. I closed the folder. It's not nothing, I said, and I meant it. Renee called, not texted, called, to tell me she got promoted. I pitched a campaign myself. They ran it. It worked. I know you did, I said. A pause, then, does it get easier building things alone? I thought about every 2 a.m., every application, every dollar. No, I said, but you stop needing it to be easy. She went quiet. I think I'm starting to understand that, she said. Most honest conversation we'd ever had. The Excellence Fund had its first cohort, 12 students. I read every application myself. One stopped me cold. San Antonio, Computer Science Junior, 3.98, 2 jobs, research paper under review. Her personal statement read, I have learned not to announce my accomplishments because no one at home asks about them. I have learned to build quietly. I would like the resources to build louder. I read it twice. Then I approved it, flagged her for mentorship, and sat there, thinking about the version of me that wrote those exact words at 19 without knowing anyone would ever read them. Someone was reading them now. Luca visited in the fall. First night we sat on my balcony, city below us. You're happy, he said. Yeah. Not performing it. No. He looked out at the skyline. I kept thinking about that table at graduation,
Your mom handing you that card." He shook his head. "I was so angry for you." "I was too," I said. "For a while." "What changed?" "I stopped needing them to understand what they'd done. I thought I needed the full reckoning, but I'd already built everything without it. Their acknowledgement would have been nice. It just wasn't load-bearing." He was quiet. Then he picked up his drink. "To the $10 gift card." I picked up mine. Best thing they ever gave me. I go back to Austin twice a year. Lunches stay small, stay honest. My father asks better questions every time. My mother stopped over-explaining herself and just shows up now. That's all I ever needed, just the trying. Renee and I text. Nothing dramatic, the ordinary weight of two people building something new on top of old wreckage. Some weeks easy, some weeks not. We're honest about both. It's not the family I deserved growing up, but it's the one we're making now with open eyes. I'll take it. That card in my drawer, $10. My parents gave Renee $18,000 and the message that the world was hers to receive. They gave me $10 and the knowledge, unintentional, painful, clarifying, that no one was coming, that if I wanted a life that meant something, I would have to build it myself, in the dark, without applause. So I did, and here is what I know now that I didn't know standing on that stage. The life you build alone belongs to you in a way nothing handed down ever could. They tried to teach me gratitude for small things. What they actually taught me was that I was capable of something enormous. I learned to see myself before anyone else did. That turned out to be everything.